I put together these slides to talk about pension and retirement plans. Although most companies don't use pensions anymore, it's kind of being phased out, especially private companies. Some public companies, some governmental agencies still use pensions, like teachers, firefighters, um, but most like businesses, like for-profit businesses, have retirement plans, like a 401k. But what is a pension? So it's an agreement where the employer, I just gave an example, so I don't have to keep saying employer. So say Diamond Logistics has a pension. So you work at this company, Diamond Logistics. Um, they, it's pretty much they're giving you money when you retire. So it's not free money, but it probably does seem like free money. And the only way to qualify to get the money from Diamond Logistics when you retire is you have to be retired. That's the first thing. If you're working for Diamond Logistics, even if you're above 65, you won't get the money. You have to actually be retired. And also, another stipulation is you have to have worked at Diamond Logistics at some point. So you might not have worked there that long. You might have only worked there for a couple of years, but you're still part of that pension plan. You may not get as much money as someone who worked there 35 years. And if you work there in a admin role and didn't make a lot of money, you're not going to make your pension will not be as high as somebody who worked there much longer and who made a lot of money, like an officer who made $300,000. So Diamond Logistics, they'll contribute money to a financial plan for your benefit. So they may send the money to the trustee. In this example, I'm using Bank of America. So based on the calculation, they may send $10,000 a month to Bank of America for benefit of the pension plan for the retired employees. It may be a really big company, so they may send millions of dollars a month to Bank of America. So obviously it depends how big the company is, how many employees they have, how much money each employee makes, etc. So if Diamond Logistics does choose Bank of America to be the trustee, then Bank of America will set up a fund. It's just the same thing as you setting up a brokerage account at your online broker. It's the same thing. They'll just set up an account at Bank of America for this pension fund, and Bank of America will choose the assets to invest in. You set it up. You'll have parameters, but they'll choose the stocks, bonds. They could really invest in anything as long as it's within what your kind of guidelines. They can't invest in really, really risky stuff if that's part of your guidelines. If you say you're not allowed to invest in anything below triple B, any bond below triple B. Remember the Great Recession when these companies, these pensions were investing in subprime bonds? Well, those subprime bonds, a lot of them were rated AAA or AA. So it's not like those pension funds, those trustees were doing anything wrong. It's just they were crap investments that were rated really high. And it's separate. The pension fund is separate from the normal accounts at Diamond Logistics. So Diamond Logistics will have on their balance sheet a cash account, which is all the cash that they hold at the various bank accounts they have. They'll have inventory. They'll have receivables. So this pension fund is outside of the balance sheet. It's not for Diamond Logistics to use for their own personal use. It's only for the benefit of people who retire. So like I said earlier, B of A is acting as trustee. It's not their money. It's Diamond Logistics money for their retired employees. And I'll go through more details, but say, for instance, you start at this company in year 2000 and you're 35 years old. And then you work at Daimler Logistics for 30 years and you retire in 2030 at the age of 65. Then, based off of the actuary's calculations, you'll receive $4,000 every single month for the rest of your life from B of A. Whether you live 1 year or whether you live 50 years, you might live to 110 years old, you'll receive the those funds. There's two types of plans. There's contributory and non-contributory. Contributory, as the word is, contribute, that means the employee makes payments into the pension fund. And they can be set up many different types of ways. So you may be required to contribute to the pension fund in order to receive the pension. That could be a stipulation. If you do not contribute, you will not get your pension. Other companies may have it where the more you contribute, it may be a minimum. You have to contribute a minimum of 3% of your salary in order to get the pension. But the more you contribute, you can contribute up to 6%, for example. So they may say something, if you contribute 3%, you will receive 30% of your salary when you retire. And if, I'm just kind of making things up, but if you contribute 5% of your salary, you will get 40% of your salary when you retire. So they kind of say 1% of your salary is 5%. So if you contribute 3% of your salary, when you retire, you get 30% of your salary. If you contribute 4%, you get 35, 5%, 40. And it's and when it's a qualified contributory plan, it's pre-tax dollars are used. So before you pay taxes, which is good for you, because if it's after-tax dollars, then you have to pay taxes on your money, then contribute. So it's more expensive. Alternatively, some companies may have non-contributory. So if you're a teacher, the government contributes the money, not you. So non-contributory, regardless of how much money you make, you're going to get that pension. Hopefully, if there's money still left over in the pension fund, at least that's the idea. So there's two types of plans. There's a defined contribution plan, and then there's the defined benefit plan. So defined contribution plan, that's like a 401k, where the employee stipulates what's invested, but the employee bears all the risk. So when you invest in a 401k, the risk is unlimited. You can lose everything, or you can make a ton of money, depending on how much risk you want to put into it. Some employees want very little risk, so they invest in bonds, but they're not going to make as much return. You cannot invest in anything. In everything. Like, you probably can't do options in a 401k. Better to invest into your own retirement. Exactly. Sometimes it's beneficial to do a 401k because there's a match. So, and it's different with each company. There's no one way to do it. Yeah, if you and like Mike said, if you do an IRA, you could do whatever you want. You can invest in anything in the world, pretty much. I mean, I guess as long as that broker has the ability to invest. Not every broker has access to everything, but 401k is a little more limited. You generally don't pick what you want to invest in. You kind of pick. You say I want to do a high risk or mid risk or low risk, and based on that, then they'll choose investments. So some employers will contribute to your 401k 5% of your salary. And it doesn't matter how much you invest. You can invest nothing into your 401k and your company will put 5% of your salary. You could put 2% of your salary and your company still puts 5%. So that means 7% of your salary goes into your retirement if you did the 2%. And you can't, there is a cap. I know it was like 18K when I was working. What is the maximum? I used to always do the maximum 401k contribution, 23,500. So you can see how long I've been out of work. So if you make $1 million a year, you can't invest 5% of your salary because that's 50K. But if you make 100,000 a year, you could do 5% of your salary. You could do 20% of your salary, up to 23,500. That's the max. You can't put more than 23,500 of your own money. Your company can put like 50,000 of your into your 401k. They can go as high as they want, but you personally cannot do more than 23,500. It's a max of 70K for the combined employer-employee. So if you did 23.5, for instance, your company can do 46.5 to hit that 70K maximum. So if you're at a company that does 5% of your salary, regardless of what you put in, for example. So let's say your salary is $50,000. And your company, every employee gets 5%. That's a good company. Okay, percent of company. So everybody gets 5% regardless of how much you put in. So how much is the contribution? Why is it? 2,500 for the year. And that's not 2,500 in one shot. If you get paid weekly, then every week your company puts in $48. Why is this? Let me just take a screenshot of this. He is suggesting us government invest 55,000K in S&P once a U.S. citizen is born. That would be good. Better to invest. What do you think of Bill Ackman's idea? That's a great idea. So if you make 100K, your company is going to put 5K into your 401K. Let me get rid of the weekly. If you make 150K, your company puts in 7,500. So if you're like a high-level executive, not many people are going to be making this money, but let's say you're a high-level executive and you make $1.6 million in base salary. You might be the CEO. 5% of your salary is 80K. So the company cannot even put in 5% of your salary because the max is 70K. So they just have to put 70K into your 401K, and you can't contribute anything because you're already at that 70K mark. They do have catch-up contribution. So if you made 100K, that's 5,000 your company contributes, and if you contribute 5% of your salary as well, that's $10,000 you put in. But you could, they give you the ability to add $7,500 if you're 50 to 59 or 64 or older. That sounds weird. What if you're 60? You can't do it. If 50, 59 or 60, you're eligible additional. So if you're 55 years old, you could put instead of 23,500, you can put in. So if your company does not contribute anything, you can still put in $31,000 of your salary into your 401K if you're in your 50s. That's a catch-up contribution. It's a nice little. Okay, so let's go on. So defined contribution plan. Examples are 401K, 403B. So also another company they'll match you up to 5%. So if you put 1% of your salary, they'll put 1%. If you put 2% of your salary, they'll put 2%, up to 5%. So if you don't put anything into your 401K, they don't put anything in either. So if you put 5%, then that's like 10% of your salary. But if you put 8% of your salary, this company will only put up 5%. They'll match up to the first 5%. And the accounting for this is so say your company contributes up to 5%, whatever you put in. Okay. The company, your company puts that in and you put that in. Why is this total? So if you make 50K and you contribute 5% of your salary, that means you put $2,500 in throughout the whole year. Your company matches it, so now you have $5,000 that is added to your 401K. So these are the accounting items that get affected. So each paycheck. So say you get paid weekly. So that's $96. Is exactly $96.15. So the company debits retirement expense, which is an income statement item, and they credit cash. Sometimes they carry it on on the balance sheet. So if they don't actually pay it out yet, if it's more of a timing thing, say they pay it at the end of the month, for example, they'll still debit retirement expense. It still hits the income statement, but they credit retirement payable. So they still so it's like a deferred liability. So say they don't actually send the money to the Bank of America until the end of the month. So it sits on the balance sheet to the end of the month, and then when the month end hits, then they'll move it. So then they'll debit retirement payable, and that's when the cash moves off the balance sheet, and they credit cash. If you're a teacher, like my mother was, you could do a 403b. So she contributed. She put a lot of money from her paycheck into her 403b. So she got her pension regardless of if she did a 403b. But in addition to the pension, she also gets a payment from her 403b. So, and she didn't have to put any money in, and she could put as much as she wants if she does want to contribute 1%, 2%, 3% of her salary. So the nice thing about the defined plan is it's unlimited, where you can have millions of dollars. If you're willing to take that risk, like say for instance, you invested in all tech, and it was a good time to invest in tech when you did it. You could and you did whatever your salary, 5%. So you might have like 6 million when you retire, where if your friend invested in only bonds, safe bonds with very low interest, they may have 1 million. So even though you both made the same exact salary, you both worked for that school the same amount of time, you have a lot more in retirement because you took the risk. So that's a defined contribution plan, which a lot of you probably do if you work at a company with a 401k. A defined benefit plan is the employer decides what's invested, and they bear the risk. So if they make poor investing decisions, like they invested in AAA subprime bonds and they lost a lot of money, then more money has to come out of their pocket to fund the pension. So the outcome is determined by the plan and computed ahead of time. So that's where when you have these pension plans, you have to hire an actuary or an actuary firm, and they'll let you know how much money you're going to need to pay for the retired employees. So there's a lot of variables to this, and it's not as it's not clear cut. It could be and you could I'll try to give you an example. So say you had a business with 100 employees. And you want to do a pension because because a pension or a retirement plan, it makes people more interested in working at that company. It gives them more of a benefit to stay at that company too. So it's small. It's not a big company, not small either, but 100 employees is a lot smaller than say the firefighters fund, which each state can have thousands of employees. So in order for the to know how much money to contribute, you have to hire an actuarial firm, and then they look at your base of employees, how old they are, how old they're going to be when they, how many the how many will be on the plan when they retire, and they also look at things like, um, if it's only women, for instance, it's going to be a little more expensive because women tend to live a little longer than men, and maybe and if say there's more Hispanic males than white males, they may have a higher life expectancy than a white male, and so on and so forth. So that's their job, these actuarial firms, to look at the employee base and try to figure out how much money the company is going to need. And it's going to change every day, because if you have 100 employees today, they may say, okay, so you're going to need, by the year 2060, you're going to need, like $7 million in the pension fund, to pay the employees. But that's with 100 employees. But say you acquire another company, now you have 1,000 employees, changes a lot, right? And also the salary of the employees. If the average salary is 35K, then they may say, oh, you don't need 7 million, you only need 2 million in this plan as of today to pay those employees, since they only make 35K today. But if the average salary, like if you have a small boutique law firm and the average salary is 200K, even with 100 employees, you may need 10 million to fund that. But the good thing is, if you're an accountant, you don't have to worry about this stuff. You're given the number by the actuarial firm. It's not your job or responsibility to calculate it. You just have to keep track of it. Also, a lot of things like affect how much money needs to be in these pension funds, the interest rates, future salaries. So just because the average salary is 35K today, the firm may say, well, that's because what we're doing now is, we're a logistics company, so most employees just work doing the grunt work. But in 10 years, we're going to be growing and hiring a lot of senior officers. So we're going to have people who are making north of 100K. But the thing is, with these plans, the benefits capped. So you may only make 4K a month in retirement in this plan, but in your 401K, if things go right, the investments go right, you can make 7K a month based on how much you're contributing today, and if you retire at 65, etc. So defined benefit, defined contribution. I think it's kind of obvious, just the words. Some more accounting things. So the way you generally look at it on the to kind of gauge how much money you're going to need in the pension fund is what they call the pension obligation. So how much you're going to need in the fund, say in 30 years from now. So it's based on those factors I said, based on how many employees, the average age of the employees, mortality rates. Because maybe as of today, the I'll just base, so 82 is what the mortality rate is. Say everybody lives to 82. That's average. But say in a decade from now, things improve a lot. Diseases, because people are living longer. So say the average age goes up to 90 a decade from now, like people are just living longer than we expected. So that you're gonna need more money in the fund. And like I said, it's provided to us, so you don't have to do any of the so the pension obligation is how much you're going to need in the future. So it's a liability on the balance sheet. It's a deferred obligation. So it's deferred liability. It's something you owe, but it's not going to be owed until a future time. And then what you actually pay on a weekly or monthly basis is an expense in the balance sheet. And that's also provided to us. So maybe as of today, the actuarial firm says you're going to need $50K a month in expenses. Because what if we started a company in 2020? I mean, there's no obligation because nobody is even retired at that company. And say in 2020 we only have 10 employees and the oldest is 48. So no matter what happens, you're gonna have zero obligation until at least that person hits 65. And not everybody stays at a company for, this 48-year-old might leave the company and he may only have 1 or 2 years at the company. So it's going to be a pretty small obligation. But as the company gets bigger and more people get close to retirement age, and you have to look at how long an employee stays. So if it's a new company, you don't have much information. But if it's a company that's been around like General Motors a long time, you can say, well, the average employee stays 13 years. That's on average. And then the average employee makes 77K. I mean, this is kind of like dependent on the company. Each company is different. In terms of mortality, it's not really a company specific thing. It's not like General Motors employees only live to 82 and Ford employees live to 92. I mean, it's a general thing, the average age, depending on your sex and some of your nationality, things like that. There's also something called vested and non-vested. So, which is also something that needs to be calculated and tracked by you and the actuary firm. So if you offer these options, some companies don't even offer it, but if you do offer vested and non-vested, let's say you make 100K and in the year 2024 you made 100K. So that means you vested, that's locked in. Once you complete 2024 or the full year, you locked in 30K of vested benefit. So that's money you're going to get when you retire. If you only work there 1 year and quit, that 30K is spread over 25 years of retirement, so you don't really get much out of it. But if you work at the company for 40 years, then you're gonna, that's a lot of pension that you're gonna get from that company. Then there's non-vested. So it's 10K a year of non-vested. I'm just doing vested 30% of your salary. So I'm going to assume this person got 30% of their salary. If they made half of that, then they only vested 15K. So I'm just going to do a nice round number of 100K. So if you work there for 2024, your salary was 100K. You vested 30K. So you lock that into your pension. So when you retire, you get that money. But non-vested is 10K. You will not earn that until you hit 5 years of the company. So say you quit. Let's keep going with the example, because in my example, I said you quit after. So say 2025, you still make the same salary, 100K. So it's another 30K vested, another 10K non-vested. So again, you locked in 30K, but that 10K you don't get, because what if you quit at the end of 2025? Then you only get 60K. But in order to get the non-vested, you have to work there 5 years, because you'll lose it if you don't, if you quit 5 years. Let's just it's not. So let's say in 2026, you still make your 100K salary, then you don't raise your salary. You invest another 30K and non-invest another 10K in 2027. So this hits the income statement each year. It's spread out throughout the year, but by the end of the year, 30K of the retirement expense was your portion. Same thing in 2025, 2026, 27, 28. So if you quit after 5 years, then you'll get all your non-vested. So that vested you're getting no matter what happens, no matter how long you stay. But say you do stay the entire 5 years, and now you get all this vested money. It doesn't go away. You get all 50K. So when you retire, you don't have to retire. You could retire in 10 years. Say you're only 40 in 2028. You could retire whenever you retire. It doesn't matter. You're going to get this money, and it's going to be spread out to you over X number of years. So I mean, if you do 2029, since you hit 5 years, you're going to get it all the vested each year. You don't have to stay another 5 years after 5. It's a minimum 5 years, so you get the 10,000 bonus each year. So it's kind of like a way. So instead of the company giving you 40% of your salary, they could just give you 40% vested. But in this case, they're kind of forcing you to stay 5 years, and they do save money, because if you leave after 4 years, they save $40,000, because they're gonna have to come up with this money when you retire. It's gonna be an expense. I mean, there's a million ways to do anything. To do this, there's a million different nuances. So vested, non-vested. So that's how generally companies look at it. They look at the projected benefit obligation. So they find out from the actuarial firm how much they need to have on their balance sheet, or what liability they need to have. And the way it's figured out is they look at number of employees, they look at the average age of the employee, the sex of the employees, and they come up with a figure how much money the company's going to need. So in this example I gave earlier, if in the year 2000 you started working at this company at the age of 35, and worked there 30 years and quit, in your specific situation, that when the actuary calculates it, they know for you, I mean, you're just one employee, but they know for you, they're going to have to pay you $30,000 a year for the rest of your life once you retire. And say they calculate based on your age, you're 65 when you retire. They're just, and when they initially do it in the year 2000, they initially make this calculation. Sometimes if you left in 2001, that changes the calculation. That changes the projected benefit obligation. But in your specific case, the company will need to have $600,000 in their retirement plan just for you in 2049. So not $600,000 today. In 2049, they will need that amount of money because you're expected to live 20 years when you retire. If you retire at 65, they expect you to live to 85 because you're a female, you're white, and that's the average age for 85. So that's $600,000. They have to present value it back to today's dollars. So they say for this particular employee, I mean, they don't break it down by employee like that when they talk to you, but this is how they calculate it. They say, okay, for this one employee, they're going to need $390K in their account as of today. Because if you have $390,000 today, that's equivalent to $600,000 in 20 years based on growth. And then they look at all the employees. So for you, it's $600K. So for you, it's $390K in today's dollars. And then they say there's a black employee, and he's 48. So he's 13 years older when he started. So he's going to need less money. And say his age, the average black male lives to 84, where the average white female lives to 85. So they'll only need to calculate, instead of 20 years, because it's assumed you're going to retire at 65, based on this company. That's the average age of retirement. So they're going to only need 19, instead of 20 years, they need 19 years. To pay you out 19 years. But you didn't work there. So Jim, the black employee, when he retires, he started working at 48. So he only worked at 17 years. So you don't have to pay him as much as a person who worked there. I'm assuming Joan is a white female and Jim is a black male. Let's just assume they both make 100K while they're working. They both make 100K, but since Jim worked less time, his pension's going to be lower, and his life expectancy is 1 year less because he's a black male. Males tend to live less than females. So in Jim's particular case, they say we need to have $400,000 to pay him for the rest of his life. When you present value that back to today, it's 220K. And they don't like do individual employees like this, but I'm just giving you an idea. They kind of look at the buckets. They're going to say how many males, how many females. They may just do male, female. That's it. I don't know. They may, the actuarial firm may break it down to like how many black males, how many black females, how many white males, how many white females. But they probably just do black, white, and I mean not male, female. Because it's generally females live like, what is it, like 2 years longer. So they look at how many employees, how many people will likely need to be paid in the year 2050, 2060, and then they come up with that number. So let's say, for instance, based on all the information the actuarial firm has, they say your PBO, your projected benefit obligation, how much money you need is $15 million based on the number of employees that will retire in 2060, for example. It's $15 million, but you only have 14 million in the account right now. So it's underfunded. When PBO, when the obligation is greater than what's in the account, it's underfunded, which is what actually most, especially governmental agencies, are underfunded. Most companies too, but especially governments are underfunded big time. And how do they get funding? Do you guys know how would a governmental agency get more money? Shadow Guy, what's up? Shadow Guy, you're another Scott. So it's just one word. How does the government get more money? We know how a private company gets more money. They have to put more money into it. If a private company is underfunded, they just have to put a little more money into the pension fund until they get to the right level. But how does the government, like if the teacher's pension fund was short, they can't just put more money in because it's not you just raise taxes. I mean, that's where all the money comes from, right? Taxes. Is it? I think you should roll over to 401k to an IRA because a 401k is limited based on that company's like parameters, but IRA is you can do whatever you want with it, so you don't have to you're not restricted. But what do you mean a trust? Is it? I think that's what you mean. Yeah, roll it over into outside of the company's control, because it's not like if a company goes bankrupt, if you work at a company and you have money in a 401k, if a company goes bankrupt, your funds are fine because your funds are sitting at like JP Morgan. JP Morgan is holding your funds. It has nothing to do with the company's money. Do I prefer Roth or traditional? I mean, I don't think it matters, but you can only do Roth if you make under a certain amount of money. In a way, I guess Roth is nice because you pay the taxes today and you don't have to worry about taxes when you retire. So how much money you make today. So if you have the money, if you have the ability to pay the taxes now, then I would do that. I don't have to worry about taxes later on. But if you make over a certain amount of money, you can't do that. But I say it's indifferent because you're going to make taxes either now or later. It doesn't matter. So find on a dollar basis, I don't think it makes a difference. But on a nobody knows the future, right? You know how you're doing today, and if you have no money to invest, then you can't do it. So if PBO is greater than what's in the actual account, then it's underfunded, which is what most pensions are, underfunded. But if PBO is less, the obligation, what you owe, is less. So in this example, if there's $14 million we're going to need, if that's what the actuarial firm says, you're going to need $14 million as of today, based on how many employees you'll need to fund in 2060. And if you look in the account, you have 15 million because you've been funding consistently, and your returns have been doing well. So you're overfunded. So you're in good shape. Victor, what's up? I'll be right back. Bathroom break. 1 minute. Yeah, so if anybody wants to hop on the stream, here's the link if you want to be part of it. I'm probably gonna move on to a different topic. I just I wanted to learn more about this. Actually, this company contacted me and about being their like accountant, and they said, are you familiar with pension accounting? And so this is the best way for me to learn is to do it, because I've never done it for actual company before. I did retirement accounting, but not pension. So I figured I'll just make a video. Because kind of once you know accounting, it's kind of like fixing a car. You don't have to fix every single car to learn how to fix a car, because like if you fix one car, there's a lot of similarities. Of course, there's differences and everything, but once you kind of have a foundation, you can figure things out. Kind of like accounting. Like once you understand some things, it's a lot easier to figure other things out. And like no one knows every single thing. Like if you go to a company, you don't know like the logon to get into QuickBooks. Like how would you know their logon? Just because like there's going to be unique things to every single company. Like you don't know, you could have specific accounts. My buddy Victor, look at that. Okay, joining the stream. How's it going? Are you there? I don't hear you. Okay. Now I hear.
Yeah, there you are. Hey, Scott.
Hey.
The audio is a little delayed. Can you hear me?
Yeah. So I wanted to learn how to do this. Like I said, this company contacted me, and I just wanted to sound smart. So it's just easy to do a video rather than just read it. Because when you do a video, you kind of like, it's like when you teach something to somebody, you learn it so much better because you're kind of like thinking about it and trying to like explain it in different ways, especially if you don't get it. You actually learn a lot more than the person you're teaching to. So the best way to master something is to teach it.
Agreed.
That's why. And you probably know that from doing videos. You learn about the market so much better by talking about it rather than just sitting there reading it. So that's pretty much the end of this PowerPoint. But pensions are kind of getting phased out. Like not many companies have pensions. You know, most companies have 401ks. How many companies use pensions? Still, some governmental agencies use pensions, but even those are being phased out a little as well. But most like private businesses, very few use pensions anymore.
But they fund 401ks, right? Like I know a lot of companies you put in like 6% and they match either 50% of that or more. So they are contributing to employees' kind of retirements in that way.
Yeah, definitely. Most companies, if a company does have a retirement plan, if it's a for-profit business like a JP Morgan, if they have a retirement plan, it's almost always going to be a 401k. Unless you work for the government, they have 403bs, which is the same thing as a 401k. But in terms of pension, it's not common anymore. I know, like the automakers had pensions. That's what's bringing them, a lot of them down.
Well, they used to have it, but no,
they used
no
to.
more.
They just because so many people are retiring when you have so many employees. So it's such a big nut to crack each month when you have millions of people sitting at home that you have to pay in addition to paying your current employees. It's just, you can't sustain it. Not the percentage of workers in the private sector whose only retirement account is defined as a benefit pension plan is now 4%. It used to be 60% in the early 80s. It used to be 60%. I wouldn't have thought that was that high. And it's about 14% of companies offer both. I mean, it sounds nice if you're an employee and you work at a company, and then when you retire, they pay you. It sounds great, but it's so expensive. Especially
and I think, speaking for myself and probably a lot of people that are watching the stream, they're spending time becoming better investors and figuring out how to make more money from stocks and investments. That I think the 401k model is better. It's better for me,
definitely.
I'll put it a different way, which is you take a job and you make average money, no disrespect to the average occupation. And then you get it based on that average money, you get a pension based on that average money. Well, over a lifetime, you're going to make an okay living. But that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to make more money. So I went for the occupations and professions that made more money. And then once I started investing, I didn't want average returns. I wanted better than average returns. So sitting around for a pension is not in my makeup. I don't want to disrespect people that want that, but I'm like, no, I want to make more. I want it like in my retirement, I want more there, and I want to be in control of it. I don't want some board to say, oh, your pension this year is going to be X. It's like, oh, great, thanks. And we all are a part of a pension system already in the form of Social Security, right?
Yeah.
Most people pay into it. Some government employees that have pensions don't have to pay into it. But I know I've paid into Social Security. I've already fully qualified because I've sent enough money in where I'm fully qualified. So I'll get a pension and I can start taking it as early as 62 or 62 and a half. And then you can make a decision at 67.
Yeah. You can max it out like 70, I think. But exactly. But when there is a pension, you're kind of at the mercy of that entity because there is a chance you don't get anything. I mean, it's not guaranteed. If you have a 401k, it's 100% guaranteed. It's your money. It's being held for you.
You're in control of it.
A pension, there's no guarantee. Even if you pay into it, even if you pay a lot of money into it, if it's bankrupt, if the company that had the pension plan, if the company goes bankrupt, the pension plan doesn't go away. But if the pension plan is depleted, then there's no money left.
Well, the amount they pay will always be adjusted based on the pension's, assets. Like if they're so pensions are going to be typically investing in really low risk assets. So they're not going to be in, the S&P, and they're going to always lag, equities. Having said that, if they fall behind, they're like, oh, we can only afford to pay 80% of what we're supposed to pay. All right, everybody, you're going to get 80. Everybody's going to take a haircut. We're only going to pay 80% of what we had planned to pay, but that's just the way it is.
Absolutely. Yeah, I remember like people saying like, because I grew up with teachers, like my sister, been a teacher a long time, my mother, they're like, oh, just be a teacher. And yeah, that's an option, but I'd rather control my fate. And if
Yeah,
it turned out better, but
I agree
now,
with you. I have a sister-in-law. She's like the nicest person, period. She's a wonderful school teacher. She just retired like a couple of years ago. And she started to work like literally as a teacher's aide, like at 19 or 18, because
yeah,
in her area there was high demand. Then she got a degree and she got her teaching credential and she continued to work. So she, at a younger age, was able to retire. Well, she stresses so much over the changes
wow,
they make on her pension, and she has no control. And I'm like, yeah, I don't want that. I'd rather be in control. Like, hey, I got to make more money, or you know what, I make plenty of money. How can I invest? How can I invest better? How's the market doing? I'd rather have control and take risks than not have control and have a sense of no, or somebody else is taking the risk. No thanks. I'd rather be in control.
yeah. No, I mean, there's benefits to both. And I might have screwed it up. Like I talk to people, or I've seen people comment like, I have no money and I'm 40 years old. I have almost nothing in retirement because they didn't have the discipline to put it in, or maybe they didn't make enough money. So they would have been better off being teachers or firefighters. So yeah, it's it's what your company, I'm sure, offers a 401k. Do they do a
Yeah,
match?
they do. They match
That's nice.
50% of the first 6% you contribute up to a certain dollar amount. Because
Yep.
I always
That's a
exceed it, and
common one. 50%.
once you get to a certain dollar amount, they'll contribute like $15,000, and that's it. And so that's cool. That's cool. And then, with 401k, once you get to a certain age, they allow for you to have what they call 401k catch up. So you can
Yeah.
contribute up to 15% of your income and avoid getting taxed on that money. So you can just take it right into a 401k account. Then your employer can match. And then in addition to that, you can move, and the percentages, you can search them, but there's a catch up period. So that person that showed up and said, hey, I'm 40, I didn't save up, what do I do? Okay, well, you have the ability to, over the next 20 years, 30 years, is have a decent retirement account. Okay. But you got to get serious today. Like, you can't complain about it for the next 10 years and then at 50 go, oh, I still don't have any money. It's like, well, dude,
Exactly.
I can't help you.
Yeah, you can add
You
$7,500,
got to start dropping some money in your accounts. You got to start
which
using
can
your
be painful for a lot
401k.
of people, but it's worth it.
If and anyway, so the catch up is really lucrative too, because you're allowed, again, money to flow into your 401k before tax. Now that's a big deal, because if you get to, say you get to 50 and you're like, cool, my kids are off to college and they're not at home anymore, and maybe your kids are solid kids and they already have jobs and moved out, and you're like, wow, I don't have that expensive of a family household anymore. You just start driving or funneling a good part of your income, like 35% of your income, into your 401k before tax. That's pretty darn cool.
And it's
And you just
pre-tax,
start
exactly.
flooding your 401k with cash and capital, and you're in control of a really, really good retirement account.
It grows. If you start early, like if you contributed, say you only did 20 years of contribution, if you contribute from 20 to 40, it's going to be so much more lucrative than 40 to 60. because that 20 to 40, even if you stop at 40, which is kind of what I did because I wanted to start my own business at 35. But I contributed so much from 20 to 35 that it grew a lot. And I still contribute now, just not as much as I used to because I converted to an IRA. An IRA, I don't have like a company matching it and things like that.
Right. So what is it you just searched? It says 7,500.
So it looks like they raised the catch up to 7,500. It used to be 6,500. Individuals who are 50 or over at the end of the calendar year can make annual catch-up contributions. 7,500 2023. And okay, so it started in 2023. It used to be 6,500. I remember 6,500. It was 6,500 from 26,000. Maybe permitted. Yeah, so you can.
When I was a youngster, I guess my mentors kept it simple and I appreciated it. One of the things they told me was always save 10% of your money every single year, right? I heard this when I was 20. How you doing, Shadow Guy?
Shadow Guy joined us.
Don't mind me. I couldn't let you guys have all the fun.
We have a party.
We're having a party. Victor, we were normally we would have an investor call today, so we weren't able to do it. So now I'm catching up.
Cool. So
yeah,
the simple advice that I was given when I was 20 was really good, which was always save 10% or more. If you save 10% of your money, you'll always have more money than you need. Just every year, you save 10%. And if you have, maybe you buy a house on a particular year, maybe that's an excuse not to save 10%. And that's pretty simple. And that sets your spending for you to only spend up to 90% of your income. Okay, well, that's good. And maybe if you can do better, then that's even better. But then you wake up and you're like 40 and you got a really nice 401k, savings account, you bought a house, you bought maybe a couple properties, and then between 40 and 50, and I'm 56, so like from 20 to 30, it was like my balance it just kind of kept creeping up. It was like a snail's pace, like, oh man, I got $2,000, and now I got $4,000, now I got $8,000. But once I got to 40, the compounding really started to get crazy, and 40 to 50 was like, whoa. And now once I got to my 50s, it's kind of a little bit of a hockey stick, which is fun to watch. It's like all the compounding that's happening.
Absolutely. So I'm trying to, if I put 10,000,
guys, I hope you don't mind me jumping in.
Yeah, you can.
This is one of the few topics I actually probably could contribute to. I mean, granted, the amount of accounting and business classes I've ever taken is a very round 0. But you guys do know. You guys know at least one person who has a pension plan. But that's because of where I live. And I can say it's interesting. I've definitely had both sides. The one thing I would add is it's unfortunate. Yeah, I agree that I personally would probably still rather have a 401k type thing, but I would rather have the choice. That's really what it is. And there used to be one so when I was working in California, Slack, right? So the lab I worked at, they switched from a pension plan to 401k type thing. It's 403b because it was public, but I remember I had friends there who said that they had to switch, right? And a couple of them actually did switch voluntarily, but then wish they didn't later, because it's not everyone is like us, right? Not everyone wants to. And you could say, well, you have to, but then do we really want to have to force people to learn about the market if they don't want to? So right. That's all I would say. It's nice to have the option. Here in Switzerland, I guess you just checked, it's actually required that they have pension plans. Now, there is something like an IRA, which is why I mentioned that I can have a traditional one here because they have something similar. They don't have something like a Roth, so that wouldn't work. But that's optional. That's considered optional. It's this like pillar system that they call it. But every employer has a pension plan, and there's a mandatory employer contribution, but you can contribute extra to it. I just haven't yet, right? Because I put my money in other things. But I don't know. I would be curious to hear from people who still have pensions in the U.S. because they do still exist, right? Certainly, my dad had one, right? Because he was the teacher. Firefighters, police, like a lot of public workers will have them. I'd be curious how that works if you can contribute extra to it. But anyway, that's my life experience.
Usually pensions are locked. Like for my mother, she was teaching, so she got her guaranteed pension with no matter what. But she did a 403b on top of that, which is like a 401k. So she had extra retirement. But most of it time it's locked, where you're going to get your pension regardless. Although some companies, like if you work at like a non-government agency, some companies, in order to get the pension, you have to contribute. And it could vary. Like some companies where you contribute 3%, you won't get as much as a pension if you contribute 4% or 5%. But yeah, it definitely could vary. Yeah, is anybody on the call that has a pension? Leave a comment. I imagine if you work for the government, you have a pension. Because I think most government jobs in the U.S., like a firefighter or a cop, still have that pension. Which is going to be, I don't know how they're going to pay for it at some point. Probably not in our lifetime, but maybe in like at the tail end of the century. I think it's going to be really hard to afford, unless taxes go up to like 50% or something. I don't know how.
Well, or other spends like defense spending go down, but good luck with that, right?
Yeah.
And these days, that's interesting. I was just thinking. So you know where I worked at was I was kind of a quasi governmental employee, because if you don't know how national labs like Los Alamos is right the most famous one. There's like Brookhaven. I was at SLAC in California. There's also like Lawrence Berkeley Lab, Lawrence Livermore, which is classified stuff. So typically they're not run directly by Department of Energy. They're contracted through some either like some private organization company. Like I think Los Alamos has its own kind of like company, but SLAC is through Stanford. Lawrence Berkeley is through Berkeley, right, university. But the thing is that even though your paycheck comes from that university or that group, in the end, it's from contracts with the government. That's why I say like it's a quasi. But they used to offer pensions, and now do not. Like now, when I joined, right, I joined after that. I had to do 403b, which was, in that case, it was educational, right? So educational purposes. It's the same as a 401k. It's just the educational version or government. So I feel like it's only moving towards the market, right? In the U.S., certainly. I mean, is there any field or any sector where companies are switching from 401ks to pensions? I don't think so.
No.
No, it's the other way around.
Yeah. It might be like one or two, but it's pretty much it's being phased out.
Yeah.
They just can't afford it. It sounds good, especially when you're a smaller company, if you only have a few hundred employees. But once you have like tens of thousands of employees, the pension you just can't afford it.
Well, they do here. Literally, it's required.
They're
so
better.
I don't know how. I don't know why it's. I mean, I don't know if there's something else that makes it more affordable here, but even small employers. Well, maybe really small employers here don't. Maybe I'd have to look into that. But
we do have in the U.S. we have a pension system, Social Security. That is a pension.
But
You pay
Victor,
into it.
they have that here too. It's called AHV. I pay into
Right.
it.
But I'm just saying, I know that corporations don't offer pensions. It's because, well, not, I shouldn't explain why they did it, but everybody is part of Social Security that's working. Okay. So if you pay into it, once you're in your 60s, you can start taking it at 62, or if you wait longer, you get a higher amount. So you get that pension amount. And then the way most employers are, okay, they allow you to put money into 401ks, which is, in my opinion, better, because then I'm a
Sure.
believer that those that put out the effort should be rewarded a little, consistent with their level of effort and their level of investment of time and learning and so forth. So those who go and manage their 401k and learn how to invest and make a higher rate of return and make the right investments, they flourish. And then there's probably a big group in the middle that are like, okay, well, I'm just going to follow the herd and kind of go into some solid ETFs, maybe the S&P. Then you can have some laggards that are like, I have no idea what to do, and I decided just to put it all in, T-bills. And they will be very safe, but they will not keep up with the rest of the market.
Okay, I'm with you. Like I said, I'm not against choice. I'm certainly for choice when we have it. It's just interesting. I mean, I also have unique problems, right? It's kind of interesting how badly set up the U.S. system is if you decide to leave and work somewhere else. I mean, to be fair, that's a lot of countries, like even in Europe, that have this issue. But I would say that they're more set up for it, for going to work somewhere else. Whereas it was difficult. So I had to roll over. I rolled over into an IRA, so I was able to do it. But I don't know. Was there something else I wanted? Yeah. There probably is something else I want to mention, but it's just interesting, the differences.
And Scott,
Oh, yeah.
I have a retirement model that I share with members of my channel. I could share it if you'd like, just to
Oh, sure. Yeah.
give people kind of a sense of, if anything, how I view putting everything together in one place.
Yeah. The maximum Social Security is 5108. Like if you earn the maximum benefits, like if your salary is like 200K or something, and you waited until 70, so the max you can get. So in California, it's not terrible, 5108, but you couldn't really live on that. You would need a little extra.
Mm-hmm.
But if you lived in certain places of the U.S., 5108 probably would be okay.
Yeah, and that also you have to take into account. Okay, you retire, you paid off your house, and then in California, they do have Prop 13, which means the state will not raise your income taxes a whole lot. So, like the first house I bought, I was 25, and my neighbor, I was complaining to him. No, I don't know how the conversation started, but I basically paid like $1,400 a year in taxes. And then he was telling me, he was complaining to me, he goes, God, man, I'm so mad at the county. Can you believe they raised my taxes from $14 to $30 a year? I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, because we bought this house like
Right.
40 years prior. So a person earning $5,100, and they're going to tax that, by the way. And they paid off their house. They don't have, rent to pay. Their taxes are super low. Okay, that's good. If they retired and they're on Medicare, that's part of their medical expense. They might get a supplemental insurance policy on top of that, and of course the out-of-pocket. So now they're focused on, okay, you got to eat. Maybe you want to take a vacation and a trip once in a while. So I think it's doable. I think 5,100, and then if you have two people that did that, 5,100 times two.
Victor, you reminded me, just real quick, that I think I asked about annuities once, what your opinion was on annuities. And for a lot of people, it's debatable, right? Like you could say, well, it's less efficient, but for a lot of people, it could be some utility. But I realized in my case, so if you have a pension, what's the point? You do have that's basically the same purpose as an annuity. It's a guaranteed money, assuming it doesn't, it doesn't fall through, right? But it's guaranteed money, just like an annuity.
That's the thing. You want to have multiple sources, not rely on just one. Because, like you said, pension, hopefully it's still there. But if you have your 401k on top of that, if you also have a rental property, it just makes things a little easier if you can do it.
Well, but then again, even an annuity provider could collapse too, right? Like, I mean, there's no.
Yeah, anything can. Yeah.
Depends whether you trust more. By the way, guys, it occurred to me because I was thinking, why is it that employers here can all afford pensions? I realized health insurance here is completely separate from employment. Your employer does not pay health insurance at all, except for accident, like on the job. I mean, that's something I would, just to get slightly political, I wish we would consider that in the U.S. Wish we would consider that.
That's my biggest expense when I was self-employed, my medical. So that keeps a lot of people from starting a business. It's just medical alone could be like $2,000 a month, especially if you have a kid or two.
Yeah, and it's different when everyone's in the same system, right? Because here it's like, no, it's not like there's two systems. No, it's literally one system. There's no Medicare, no Medicaid, no VA, as far as I know. Maybe there's a government plan, but it's all your private health insurance. Everyone's in the same thing. And so that really helps keep the premiums consistent, right? And manageable. But yeah, it's just different way of looking at things. But it's interesting, right? Like, I don't know if you guys have run this kind of business before, but the amount of expense that employers, right, who have to do it, will have to contribute towards employee medical plans, dental plans, it's not insignificant, man.
The employers spend quite a bit on that, and they also have to match your Social Security. So your Social Security tax is 6.2%. The employer matches that 6.2%, and it goes up to a certain income. Like I forgot the amount, but about 100 and some odd thousand. And then Medicare. So same thing. You have the employee contributing into Medicare, and that has a higher limit. And so employers are paying health insurance and they're paying Social Security. And I'm not sure if they're paying the Medicare. And they pay disability insurance, workman's comp insurance. It costs money to have employees in the U.S.
Like everywhere. Yes. All right. Anyway, I just wanted to stop in and say hey and give my experience on that. So thanks for having me on, Scott.
Yeah, no problem.
All right.
Okay.
I'll just watch passively now. So.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks for jumping in. Yeah, it's almost impossible for some people to do a business anymore in the U.S. It's just so expensive. The U.S. a lot more than most countries. That's why we have to outsource. That's why a lot of U.S. companies, they just cannot afford to make things in the U.S. Like the iPhone, like they just can't afford it. I mean, unless you're willing to pay $3,000 or $4,000 for an iPhone, when most people won't. So you have to go to China. The Americans' wheels in motion. But
so, I don't know if you're going to have time, but I was curious, like, to hear your opinion. We've got conflict in Iran, and I was surprised that the U.S. initiated kind of like a missile strike, but it happened, and it's like, whoa! I think it was late last night when I heard about it, and then the markets are. The stock futures are going up. It's like, what? Why is that? It's like, I thought the markets were going to kind of crash, but they're not.
It's like the opposite. It seems a lot of times that you try to like understand and predict things, and it's the opposite. Like so you buy gold, you think, okay, it's a really volatile, tough market, so I'll invest in gold, and then gold does poorly, or like it's a lot of times it's weird that the opposite happens. Yeah, that's why it's so hard to predict these things. So that's why you just have to like sometimes just buy an index or an ETF and just let it ride. Because if you try to like time things, it's yeah. What are you talking about in terms of like commodity prices or the market in general?
The stock market, because I'm looking at the futures, and the Dow futures are up slightly, S&P's up, NASDAQ futures are up. I don't think China's or Japan are open yet. And then crude oil, it had gone up 0.73 or so, but now it's down, just up 0.27. So, man, when I was going to bed last night, I'm like, okay, the market's going to sell off. It's going to sell off because this is a pretty scary moment. But it's not.
Yeah. So people are buying. So people are. I mean, the only way for it to go up is that you have more buyers and sellers. So it just sometimes it just doesn't make sense. So what is the where do you go to see the futures?
Well, I'm looking at them on Google Finance. So I go to Google Finance, and then you can look at futures.
Is the
See futures up on the top menu. On the very top, last to the right, futures.
futures. So Dow, everything's up slightly, and gold is down.
Isn't that crazy?
Oil is up.
Yeah, hey, U.S. may have just gone to war against Iran. Gold is down. It should be going up.
That's crazy. Well, I can't believe how high gold's getting. 33.84. Wow.
Yeah.
It could hit 4,000.
I went Bitcoin. I didn't go gold. I've done well with Bitcoin.
Yeah, Bitcoin's doing really well. Do you buy on Coinbase? Is that where you buy your
No.
Bitcoin?
I bought on Coinbase, and I bought on a layer 2 platform, and because of fees. So I sold all the Bitcoin I had on Coinbase, and I still have how many Bitcoin? I have like over a Bitcoin. Let me tell you exactly what I have.
Yeah, I don't have
one 1.279 Bitcoin. So I have 126,000 of Bitcoin.
I'm sure you're doing pretty well with that.
Yeah, it's been a good investment. It's been a good one. Like instead of gold, I'm like, I totally don't understand gold. I'm like, I get people treated as, a hedge, in that historically it's been that commodity it holds. It's a store of value. I understand Bitcoin more than I understand gold, so I went to Bitcoin.
Well, yeah, it's real volatile. So it's been like it hasn't really it broke through 100,000, but it hasn't really stayed there. So
Right.
this year, did it hit 100,000 last year at all, or was it? I think it was
No.
all this year.
Yep.
It was
Especially
all this year.
once Trump was winning or elected, it really took off because he's really friendly to crypto, and the Trump family's actually minting their own coins. They're kind of meme coins. So the space really took off once he got elected.
Yeah,
You
it
see,
turned out to be.
Bitcoin's down today 3%, and it should be a day when it should go up. But we'll see how it trades tomorrow once we really start trading.
Yeah, it is down quite a bit today. I mean, I'm surprised. Like when it hit 100, I was I thought it would come down, and it did, but it came right back past it. But it doesn't seem like it stays there. But
Mhm.
I think it's gonna keep going up.
The bulls are saying it's going to go to 500,000, and that so the bulls, because if you study like in January,
Yeah.
right, we started the year and Bitcoin had already surpassed 100,000 in 2024 at the very end, and the bulls were like it's going to get to 500,000 before the end of 2025. I don't think that's going to happen. We only have what 6.5 months, less than 6.5 months, more like 6 months left in the year, and it's not going to go from 100 to 500 now. Maybe it goes from 100 to 125. You know, that'd be a pretty good year, but it's not going to go up to 500,000.
That people will make a lot of money, I guess, if it did. But where's the money coming from? Who's funding the? If it did get up that high,
Here's what makes Bitcoin so darn attractive is you're a person in Argentina. We have a member on my channel. Well, I shouldn't be that specific, but let's just say generally in Argentina they have high inflation, and the government kind of doesn't want people to do this, but they'd rather be in Bitcoin because their currency is just losing so much value, right? So stable coins are going to help with that. But for now,
yeah,
Bitcoin, whether you're in Argentina, El Salvador, maybe in Nigeria, in
Argentina.
Vietnam, I mean, you name the country, right? And you're like, you know, Bitcoin is a pretty good store of value, and it keeps going up as opposed to if I hold my money in my country's currency, it continues to lose value with purchasing power against inflation. So it's become that instrument in a lot of people's financial lives is a store of value. And it's a lot easier to transact and move, right? Like gold, you can't, if you have physical gold, and let's say for me, right, let's say a loved one needed $20,000. And it's like, oh, well, I'm going to send you $20,000 of gold. That's going to be hard. But if you have
Right.
Bitcoin, you can send it from your wallet to theirs, and they immediately get it.
Yeah, it's a lot. That it used to be the U.S. dollar. People would do that, but it's expensive to transfer fiat. That's why Bitcoin, and it's safer. Bitcoin's safer as long as you keep the password for your wallet secure. Of course.
I know.
But wow, look at Argentina. They always have a ton of inflation. It's 43% of inflation. It's like one of the worst. They're the worst.
Well, you look at Brazil, you look at Mexico, you look at, I mean, these are pretty big countries, right? With a big population, people working hard. And I mean, information flows, like knowledge flows very quickly. They know that, hey, if you park your money in Bitcoin, yeah, you're not going to earn an interest, but judging from how the coin has held its value, you're going to do better. So, and then who can audit your Bitcoin wallet? No one. No government has any authority over Bitcoin. No government has authority over the blockchain. So it's like, okay, cool. People can do it in secrecy quite well.
Yeah, it's I mean, when we were 10% inflation, that's Russia right now. It's 10%. I mean, everything got out of control. And it was chaos. Now we brought it back down.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like that every day in Argentina. There's just no faith in the peso. It's garbage. It's just they still use it, I wouldn't. I mean, I was in Argentina, and they probably use U.S. dollar a lot there. I didn't use U.S. dollar there, but they must use it because I don't think people are using Bitcoin to buy things
No.
anymore. Really.
Now, if you wanted to buy something, you'd have to get your own currency. Yeah.
But I think people probably feel more comfortable with the U.S. dollar in Argentina
Mm-hmm.
than the peso, because if you wait a few weeks, you lost a lot of value with that peso. It loses so much value. It's just crazy. Over 40% inflation, and it's always seems high. Inflation. I guess it's the government. It's really the government that caused the inflation. It just must be in Argentina.
This is in hamburgers here.
Yeah.
Average cost of Big Mac.
That makes sense. That's pretty much every country sells Big Macs for the most part. So it's a good way to decide. So just over the course of it's anybody on the stream that lives in Argentina? Probably not. But it's not like a country that's in ruins. Like if you go to Argentina, it's a pretty nice country. It's not like certain countries.
Educated population. There's a lot of things going for it.
Yeah, it's pretty. I mean, besides inflation, it seems like they have a pretty good, fairly good economy. Like they have, good, high-paying jobs, fairly well educated. It's just the government's so corrupt. Why is Argentina inflation so high? Overspending. Okay, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That'll do it.
Yeah, you get some countries, right? And you look at how many people are employed by the government. It should be like a low percentage, like 10%, maybe 20. But you get some governments and like 30-40% of the workforce is employed by the government. That means the private sector is literally each person has to work to pay the taxes to employ another person. I mean, that's pretty heavy. That's pretty heavy load. It's another, if a person works and they're like, yeah, I'm working because I'm going to pay the taxes to provide the services for the government, right? Which will be maybe a tenth of a person. And 10 of us will work, and then combined we're employing one person in government. That's a little more balanced.
And there's a lot of and this happens a lot in the US too. You have these contracts. So like a government will spend. Did you see that thing with Brett Favre on Netflix?
No.
That was a good story. But a government agency would enter into a contract and pay a private company like billions of dollars, and then you find out that private company is the cousin of the governor, things like that. And even if the private company does the work, but you didn't have to pay them $1 billion to do the work. You could have paid them like $100 million, but you paid them $1 billion, so they pocket the other $900 million and they kick back because there's an unlimited amount of money in the U.S. It seems, at least they treat it. So if they waste money, they just know the bucket. You just fill it up. So everybody's looking out for themselves. I mean, I imagine that's only just part of it. There's probably so much more going on in a country like Argentina. You know, like you said, they're employing so many people in government jobs, and then you have these people who are crooked. But it just seems like they never learn. It's got to be tough because if you work your whole life, like if you work 20, 30, 40 years, and when you retire, you expected your money to last, and then the government screws everything up, and then even if you had a few million, it's worthless because now it costs.
But if you own assets, that's where you want to be. Is, you know, if you own assets, those assets are going to go up with inflation. So if you own real estate and inflation caused $100,000 home to now be worth $1 million. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Your assets are worth $1 million, and so forth and so on. So you want to stay invested, and I think so that's the moral of this segment is stay invested because you don't depend on the government. Because for all you know, like I'm expecting that I'm going to get my Social Security. I've heard that, you know, and I've heard it my whole life. There's some things which is interesting is there's some things I've heard my whole life that have never come to fruition. And those dogs keep on barking. Like when I was a youngster, oh, Social Security is going to run out of money. And keep going on. Now, when I was a youngster, I was 20. Now 56. I'm like, well, we're not running out of money. Okay. Second thing was, the internet's going to make so many people unemployed. Well, actually, we've gotten a lot wealthier, and the U.S. has gotten so much productive, and our companies are worth so much more money. Where they're making so much money now because of the internet, and the latest bark around that is, AI is going to unemploy a lot of people, and there's some truth to that. Some people will not need to do that with like a very, very elementary job, like answering questions for a customer on the phone. Maybe fewer people will need to do that, but those folks can, you know, improve their skill set and maybe do some other job that's even better because it frees up people to go do something more important, valuable, higher pay for themselves. That's really what it's about. Like in California, where I live, my whole life I've heard, oh, we're losing these jobs. They're moving to another state. Oh, we're losing these jobs. We're going to another state. And this is my own independent theory, economic theory. That's a good thing. Why? When I was in college, we had many aerospace jobs leave. Like aerospace jobs were deemed to be really good jobs, and they are. And they left and they went to other states. And what that allowed is all of a sudden all these engineers were available. But hey, engineers, come to the software side, come to the internet companies, come to what is now the most valuable part of California is all this technology. So having kind of a cycling through industries and somewhat letting go of the the industries that have been around a long time that are not competitive anymore. If you get those out of your economy and replace them with brand new industries where they're really high margin, growing, expanding, owning the future, we're better off. And California has had that big economic situation, and I think that's why the state flourishes, and it continues to flourish. And when we lose jobs because like, oh, this old school company is leaving California, I'm always like, okay, good. Then the people who stayed back can go work at a new school company and do far better, make far more money.
Yeah. No, it's just the way it is, and you need to innovate. Could you imagine if like electricity wasn't invented, or if you could imagine all these things, I'm sure even back then, people were like, oh my God, electricity, it's going to take all our,
Right.
we won't need all these people answering phones anymore. It's just like, and we could just imagine if everything stayed archaic, how much worse it would be. Things evolve.
The candle makers before electricity, the
Yeah.
candle making industry got disrupted. So a lot of candle makers were like, "Oh, what do I do now?" Well,
I
take your
know.
skill set elsewhere, and because it's
Exactly.
that technology is not going away. Everybody likes light bulbs.
It's just like cell phones, and like, things evolve, and things disrupt markets, and you may have a business and are successful making rotary phones, but now you have to adapt. You may have to be an employee at a company if you don't understand technology, and then you're gonna have to learn.
Right.
Or yeah, I'm excited to see what AI does. That's why I'm glad. Like, if you're not sure, just do what we did. Just invest in these companies, like a Google or a Meta, because they're
So my
growing.
my 20-year-old son, AI related, goes, "Hey Dad, did you hear about the MIT report? Why don't you Google the MIT report on ChatGPT?" And I'll kind of preview what you're going to see. A lot of youngsters are using ChatGPT, and there it is. It's the second. Your brain on, you had it right below. Your brain on ChatGPT. So basically, what this article says is, kids are, instead of doing the critical thinking to learn, they're using ChatGPT to get all the answers. Well, their brain, it's like a muscle. If you don't exercise and use your muscles, you're going to have a weak body and it's not going to be at full strength. And your brain's the same way. If you read this article, it totally makes sense. And we're going to have to figure out how much ChatGPT is going to be allowed in the classroom. How can teachers and professors circumvent, the reliance on these tools and maybe change the way they teach? Because if kids are going to their dorms or going home just using ChatGPT to get all the answers, well, maybe in classroom they got to start doing more. Okay, enough of this. You're going home and do all the work. You need to do the work in the classroom with no computers. That way you learn it.
Yeah, no, I remember like if you're good at like automating things, like I remember I used to use Excel a lot to automate things. I know it's gotten more advanced. And if people use my Excel models, they can't identify mistakes because they have no idea how it works. They're just kind of punching things in. So there is a setback with automation. If you're just kind of like following a process, you can't identify. Well, you have no reference point to identify.
Pretty soon my skill is I know how to type in questions for ChatGPT to do the work. It's like, well, that's not a skill. That's not a skill. You tell me, like, you say calculus, show me that you know how to calculus. It's like, okay, you have to demonstrate that you can do calculus.
Yeah, and I think it's good technology like that, as long as you could use it and improve. Like if you want to like build something, if you use ChatGPT, great. As if you're kind of like, if you're actually doing things and not just, because the problem with ChatGPT, although it's great, like there's a lot of things like for investing, like I don't think it could, like when I type in like what is the best thing to invest in for someone my age, it's not going to give me like the great, you have to have some. I mean, I wouldn't like just use ChatGPT and say we don't need any knowledge for that. Certain things it's helpful for, like what's the capital of the state.
Yeah,
but more complex things, I think. But in addition to like, if you're already doing good amount of due diligence and you type in a ChatGPT about investing, it's just more information you can apply. and you might learn something new and not think of something.
Yeah, on my live stream yesterday, I actually used Gemini. I used Gemini instead of chat. And we were talking about Zim, you know, the shipping company. And I'm like, well,
Yeah.
what have rates been doing? So then I just asked Gemini, what are ocean shipping rates doing? What's the trend? And it came back with just an excellent answer. Hey, they were going up for like the last month, but now recently they've been dropping. And it's expected that they're going to keep dropping. It gave me a perfect answer. I'm like, all right, 1 point AI. That's exactly what I needed.
Exactly. Yeah. As long as you have some knowledge on if you go into something totally blind, like you're not going to become like a great chess player by just using ChatGPT. But if you're already a good chess player, you can leverage that stuff. Yeah, Zim, that's crazy stock.
Yeah,
But
I don't
you're
know where
investing
it's
in,
going.
right? It's
So I have a small position, but I'm probably going to sell it because the latest is that shipping rates are dropping. I thought they were going to start to rise, but they're not. And if shipping rates don't rise, Zim isn't going to go anywhere. And
yeah, it's
all we
very
need,
dependent on shipping rates.
all we need is one of their ships to get struck by a missile, and the stock will go down 20%.
Yeah. It's dry bulk shipping rates, right? That
Mm-hmm.
term investor, so I can't really. Scott, have you ever watched the channel What's Going On with Shipping? She has 36 viewers. What's yeah, it's such a brutal industry, and Zim is more brutal than the average industry, than the average shipping company. That stock is crazy. A
Yeah.
48% dividend.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So anything else? I think I was going to end it here. Kind of getting
Yeah,
hungry.
thanks for having me. It's very nice to speak with you. And
Yeah.
I'm gonna probably stream later tonight if anybody wants to join my stream later. But we'll see how the market trades, and let me know when we can do a full length stream together. I'd love to do it.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's always fun talking to you, and your subs come on to my subs. Okay. Yeah, I'll check out your stream later.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks, Scott.
Thanks a lot, everybody.
Have a good night.
Okay. Talk to you
Bye.
later. Okay, bye.